Toji Fushiguro is incredibly cool. The man who overcame the pinnacle of the Jujutsu world, the world where curse techniques reign supreme through sheer planning and ingenuity, contending with supernatural monsters with martial might alone. Toji is rawness incarnate, the Batman of the Jujutsu world, a methodical madman that every viewer is enamored by. He is simply that guy. But beneath this cool exterior, beneath this tough shell, is a broken man, a tragic victim of his life's unfortunate circumstances. And the real tragedy is not just in the way the Jujutsu world broke him down, but rather the way he broke himself down even further through the myriad of self-destructive decisions he made in search for validation by the ones who ostracized him. Today we will be unraveling one of the most beloved antagonists of recent times, descending beneath the man he presents himself to be in hopes of determining who he truly is. Before I begin, I would like to give a major thank you to Kurto over on Twitter for this beautiful thumbnail. His art is absolutely amazing and I have left a link to his page in the description below, so if you do like this gorgeous piece, make sure to check him out and show some love. Toji was born into the Zen'in family with zero cursed energy, and that detail alone provides a great deal of insight with regards to the childhood he must have had. The Zen'in are obsessed with bloodlines and innate talents. They value cursed techniques above all else, and consider those who lack those talents to be lesser. It's very clearly implied that Toji had a terrible childhood. This is best seen through Maki's character, who functions as a foil to Toji as an individual suffering the same predicament in the same family. And in Toji's case, as a male, as a potential candidate to one day head the family, it was probably even worse. They most definitely had huge expectations for the boy, only for him to be born with zero cursed energy. A massive disappointment to the family who value that cursed energy over anything else. He was ostracized by the very people closest to him, his own flesh and blood, and at some point in time he was exiled from the family and left to live in isolation. Disgraced by the ones who considered him a disgrace, Toji became the infamous sorcerer killer, a mercenary who targets cursed users and kills them for money, to survive. He collected cursed weapons from his fallen victims and in time built an armory of these tools which he stored in a cursed spirit. This is the Toji Zen'in we first meet in the story, a character defined by his martial prowess, existing on the fringe of Jujutsu society, talentless in the world of the supernatural yet incredibly gifted in the natural world, a cunning murderer who makes use of the knowledge he gathered from his time as a Zen'in to crush his victims. His ability and strength to defeat and kill sorcerers, those born with innate talents in spite of his own lack of talent, made him incredibly prideful. He lived to prove that he was better than the ones that shunned him. A bitter, insecure man whose life goal is to crush the Zen'in clan once it reaches the peak of its power, to murder their strongest members, to spit in the face of their conservatism. What better way to get back at those who prioritize power through cursed techniques over even familial bonds than to crush them without that power? His ultimate target essentially being the next 10 Shadows cursed technique user, as that is the pinnacle of the Zen'in clan's potential. Ironically, his own seed gives birth to a child possessing that very power, the child who changed the course of Toji's life. It is very clearly implied that meeting Megumi's mother, marrying her and having a child with her was the best thing that could have happened to Toji. He threw away his pride, meaning he stopped dedicating himself to killing sorcerers and named this child Blessings. As someone who was born into one of the 3 great families of the Jujutsu world, talents were not just expected of him but considered a birthright. Yet fate had other plans for Toji, birthing him talentless with zero cursed energy. He grew up envying everybody around him, those who had manifested their blessings in the form of cursed techniques. That is why he calls himself a monkey, to refer to this lack of cursed energy. Monkeys are primates, the same branch of animals as humans, a derogatory way of referring to regular people that he definitely picked up from his egotistical family, the self-glorified Zen'in who view those without cursed energy as scum. and so Toji views Jujutsu techniques as the blessing he never received. Thus he names his own son Blessings, for reasons that may be ambiguous but still incredibly telling. Perhaps Toji considered Megumi's birth a worthy replacement to the blessing he was denied, or perhaps he was just manifesting the possibility that at least his son wouldn't suffer the same fate. The one who yearned for approval, to impart meaning upon his existence, found exactly that in love and parenthood. He finally found somebody who accepted him for who he was, but then his wife died, and he regressed back to those self-destructive tendencies. It was mentioned by Akutami himself that Megumi's mother helped Toji become his normal self after his abominable past, but her sudden demise made Toji spiral and revert to his old ways, just like how he was before he met her. Back to that massively insecure outlook, which ultimately leads to his own demise. We are introduced to Toji in a racing competition, which symbolizes his insecurity. He is gambling despite Kong stating that he isn't the type to gamble. Toji is a cold, calculated killer, as we see all throughout the arc. He wears Gojo and Geto down through countless distractions over the course of several days, all for the purpose of setting the stage for his entrance, to crush them at their weakest and grant himself a heavy advantage. He is not the type to gamble, but here he is, gambling and losing his money. A subtle piece of foreshadowing for his ultimate gamble, choosing to fight against the pinnacle of the Jujutsu world at the end of the arc, despite having already completed his job and received his payment. He was on his way home. He did not need to fight Gojo. He could have very easily escaped, and that is made abundantly clear. The man is practically undetectable, but in the end he falls victim to his own pride. One of Toji's many weapons is the Chain of 1,000 Miles, which can extend infinitely, the perfect representation of Toji's character. Chains are associated with fate in all forms of literature. His entire life, the person he is, was dictated by a myriad of factors outside of his control, things that are attributed to the fate of life. The best aspect of this symbolism is the single condition the chain requires. It can only work so long as the user does not let the base of the tool be seen. This represents Toji's endless struggle with perception, specifically how others perceive him. A bitter man suffering from being judged since the day he was born for things out of his control, lashing out at the Jujutsu world for ostracizing him whilst wearing the facade of a tough guy, a desperate attempt at hiding his insecurities. Toji's characterization through subtext can also be found in the worm curse he uses as a bank for his cursed tools. The worm resembles a section of an intestine, with its reddish, pinkish and blotted appearance, fitting as it resides in Toji's gut. The worm also resembles an umbilical cord wrapped around its host, which is again very fitting for obvious reasons. An umbilical cord connects the baby to its mother, allowing the mother to transport oxygen and other necessary nutrients to their child. This not only highlights how the worm acts as Toji's greatest asset, how the worm acts as a baby itself, but also the irony of Toji's existence. Nobody can deny that Toji is an absolute monster, a champion of martial might, someone who has achieved the peak of human potential, but he exists on the fringe of the Jujutsu world, dead center between the worlds of supernatural and ordinary. This is consistent throughout various aspects of his character, but it is especially ironic in his means of fighting. Toji makes use of cursed tools to contend with sorcerers. He absolutely needs these weapons to overcome them. He only managed to defeat Gojo the first time because of the inverted spear of heaven. Toji may be a monkey, as he personally proclaimed, and he takes great pride in that fact. But even so, he depends on tools belonging to those with blessings, a man defined by irony and contradictions. He takes pride in killing sorcerers in spite of having no cursed energy, but he can only do so through the use of cursed tools. And he isn't the type to gamble, but he lost his life in the ultimate gamble. The family he was born into, the environment he was raised within, the circumstances he was dealt, all are examples of the various things outside of Toji's control that made him who he was. But he did have control over his own choices. He could carve out any path for his life, especially after finding meaning in his love with Megumi's mother. She broke him free out of the shackles of his life's fate, and he chose to chain himself once more by regressing back into his old ways, becoming a terrible father to the child he personally named after the blessings that determined the course of his life, the child who supposedly changed him. In a nutshell, this is a man who consistently made the wrong decisions, a slave to fate. That is the real tragedy of Toji Zen'in. Toji is a terrific character, and what's most impressive is the fact everything I've discussed in this video takes place in the span of just 5 episodes or 13 chapters. And he only gets better with time, as the story progresses and his impact on the narrative grows exponentially. There are countless aspects of his character that I've barely brushed upon, such as his impact on Suguru Geto, his role in shaping the trajectory of the story, and his existence as someone with a heavenly restriction, what that means for the world. Manga readers know that Toji only gets more important with time, but this video was made to be safe for anime only fans of JJK, so I refrained from diving into any material that has yet to be adapted. With that being said, this is definitely not the last time we'll be discussing Toji on the channel. I hope you enjoyed this analysis, and I hope to keep you around for my future JJK videos. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day.